one of my students told me that it is his dream to read Harry Potter in Russian. And he tried, but it was too difficult. I grabbed the book, and I realized he was right. The Russian translation uses vocabulary that would be difficult for high intermediate and even advanced students of Russian. So, if you have the book, read a page, mark what was difficult, and then watch my video to see if my explanations answer your questions.
Okay, let's start reading Harry Potter together in Russian. Гарри Поттер по-русски. As you can see, I also added letters yo, like marks above letters yo, because in actual Russian books, we usually don't have the letter yo printed. Russian native speakers just naturally know where it appears and how to read these words. But here I added it, so... Okay, начинаем. Глава 1. Мальчик, который выжил. Мистер и миссис Дурсель проживали в доме номер 4 по Тисовой улице и всегда с гордостью заявляли, что они, слава богу, абсолютно нормальные люди. Уж от кого-кого, а от них никак нельзя было ожидать, чтобы они попали в какую-нибудь странную или загадочную ситуацию. Мистер и миссис Дурсель весьма неодобрительно относились к любым странностям, загадкам и прочей ерунде. Мистер Дурсель возглавлял фирму под названием Гранингс, которая специализировалась на производстве дрелей. Это был полный мужчина с очень пышными усами и очень короткой шеей. Что же касается миссис Дурсель, она была тощей блондинкой с шеей почти вдвое длиннее, чем положено при ее росте. Однако этот недостаток пришелся ей весьма кстати, поскольку большую часть времени миссис Дурсель следила за соседями и подслушивала их разговоры. А с такой шеей, как у нее, было очень удобно заглядывать за чужие заборы. Okay, now let's take a look at some words in this translation. Overall, I have to say that translation in Russian appears to be a little bit more complex in terms of the language than the original writing. So probably sometimes it's hard to understand some words that are used here because in the English version, much simpler words are used. But let's take a look. So first of all, глава 1. So naturally for me to say chapter numbers in the ordinal, by using ordinal numbers like 1, 2, 3, but you can also use the cardinal numbers like 1, 2, 3. So глава 1 или глава 1, первая глава. So the title of it is «Мальчик, который выжил». And in the English original, it's «The boy who lived». So to live, we know the verb is жить, but here we have выжил, and I think it's a good translation because выжил literally means to survive. So in this case, the boy who lived is literally the boy who got to live or who survived. So that's a very good verb to use here. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Дурсель, so the name is interesting how they I guess not translated, but transliterated. And in English, it's Dursley, which I read as Dursley with the sound. But here they translate it as Dursl. It actually is very hard to pronounce for native speakers, for Russian native speakers, because of Dursl. But I think they were going for kind of like an allusion to the Russian word durak or durnoy, which means a fool or kind of like foolish. That's my guess. Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Дурсель проживали. And in English, we don't really have the word to live. Yeah, they were just like of that address. And in Russian, we have the verb проживать, which literally means to reside at some place or to live for a specific amount of time. So, for instance, we can ask, кто проживает в этом доме? and it's going to be more official way to ask rather than кто живет в этом доме, because проживать, we're asking about the official residence. Or when we're talking about the people who passed away already, we can say этот человек прожил долгую жизнь. So прожил by using it in the perfective. So here we have проживать, the imperfective form, because they are living in that house right now. But прожить would be the perfective form, like they lived their life. Окей, в доме номер 4 по Тисовой улице, и всегда с гордостью заявляли. Такой интересный, there's an interesting way of saying, to say, like in English, they were proud to say, but here we have заявляли. Заявлять literally means to make an announcement, and with kind of like this, feeling of pride. So really with заявляли, you don't even need to say с гордостью. But it, in the original we have with pride, so I think the translator, left it. Plus, it actually does sound good in Russian, but it's really like making kind of like this really announcement, and like not just say, but like make it matter. Be kind of like a little bit full of what you're saying. So we can also use it negatively, like when people are fighting and retelling that fight to somebody, you can say, and then he said, и он мне заявил, она мне заявила. Yeah, so, and that gives us the understanding how it was said. Okay, что они, слава богу, абсолютно нормальные люди. They are totally normal people. And then there is an interesting expression. Уж от кого-кого, а от них нельзя было ожидать. That's a very good kind of like colloquial, not necessarily colloquial, standard expression. It's an idiom. Уж от кого-кого, а от тебя, от нее, от plus genitive. It's like I could have expected it from anyone but you. So, and that's how we use it. Уж is the particle that's also used to kind of like put more emphasis, stylistic emphasis on what you're saying. Yeah? So, yeah, that's a good expression to know. Уж от кого-кого, а от тебя я этого не ожидал. Уж от кого-кого, а от Ивана никто такого не ожидал. So when they do something completely out of character. Чтобы они попали в какую-нибудь странную или загадочную ситуацию. And here we have странный, which is odd. Yeah, strange is in the original, which is a good translation. And загадочный literally is mysterious, because загадка is kind of like a riddle. Okay. Мистер и миссис Дурсель весьма неодобрительно относились к любым странностям, загадкам и прочей ерунде. In English, it's like because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. And here we have this весьма неодобрительно относиться. Относиться is to have some kind of opinion of something, к plus dative. And весьма неодобрительно is basically when we say we don't like something, literally it's like not approvingly, and it's an adverb, and it's a pretty, I would say, kind of like high style of speaking. Same with весьма, it's basically very, or like очень. So мистер и миссис Дурс, им очень не нравилась всякая ерунда would be a simple way to say it. And then in English, they just use the word nonsense, but here we have странности, загадки и прочая ерунда. So странности, again, it's something strange, that's something that we wouldn't do, so that appears odd to us. Загадка, as I said, it's like more of a riddle, or something we do not understand. And ерунда, that's basically nonsense, the word for nonsense. Прочий is also kind of like a higher, stylistically a higher word to say другой, и ко всей другой ерунде. Okay, Mr. Дурсель возглавлял, okay, hold on a second, I'm gonna remove all these writings. So, мистер Дурсель возглавлял фирму под названием Grunnings, которая специализировалась на производстве дрелей. In English, it's much simpler. Was the director of a firm called Grunnings, which made drills. So, возглавлял фирму is kind of like a way to say he was the head of that company. And под названием, this is a good way to say like something that is called. Да, например, он работает в фирме под названием Grunnings. Он директор фирмы под названием Grunnings. Another way to say would be use который. Которая называется Grunnings. Or we can just say фирмы Grunnings, которая производила или делала дрели. So here the translator went like a longer route, that made drills. So it's like that специализировал, like was that specialty, or it was specializing on manufacturing of drills. It reads just fine in Russian, but I bet it would be difficult to understand in Russian. So here we have дрель, the word дрель, and it ends in soft sign. And here we have genitive plural. So remember when we have soft sign and the letters that go like this, which is ch, sh, 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 and soft sign, we go yay, like врач, врачей, дрель, дрелей, гараж, гаражей, ночь, ночей. Okay, just a little bit grammar. Okay, now let's go back to the lexical items. So, он был полный мужчина. Hold on a second. Gonna remove that. Go back to the... Okay. Это был полный мужчина. So here he is a big beefy man. Полный is kind of like a little bit overweight, kind of like fudgy, I would say. Beefy, when I hear beefy, I imagine somebody, probably big but somewhat muscular. But I don't know. But it's still good translation. С очень пышными усами. Пышный is like the one that has a lot of volume. For instance, when we, blow dry the hair, the women do, we're trying to make them more пышные, то есть пышная прическа. So пышный, like lots of volume in it, и очень короткой шеей, and, in English it's like hardly any neck, in Russian it's like a very short neck. Что же касается миссис Дурсель, again, in English, I'm sorry, there was nothing that kind of leads up to Mrs. Dursley. It just goes into Mrs. Dursley was thing. But here, it's a good, but again, kind of like stylistically higher expression. Что касается чего-то or кого-то, so it goes with genitive. Что же касается меня, что же касается тебя, что же касается нашего проекта, literally means what in relation to this person, with regards to this project, and so on. Она была тощей. In English we have thin, and тощий is kind of like sickly thin. So in Russian we can say стройный for somebody who is thin and fit. We can say худой, that's just thin. And then тощий, it's kind of like a little bit scarily thin, like very, very thin. Блондинкой с шеей почти вдвое длиннее, чем положено при ее росте. And here in English it says nearly twice the usual amount of neck. So in the translator basically literally says then it's basically supposed to be with her height. So pretty good translation, but probably can be confusing. Okay, однако, and однако is again still stylistically higher word than, let's say, но, yeah. Однако этот недостаток пришелся ей весьма кстати. Can we see this весьма that we saw here? And again, it's just like very, yeah. Очень would be the synonym for it. And пришелся кстати is another idiomatic expression, literally means to come in handy. So in English it's like came in very useful. Yeah, so came in useful, came in handy, да. О, этот подарок пришелся как раз кстати, потому что, например, мне подарили пылесос, и это пришлось как раз кстати, потому что мой старый пылесос сломался. Or I was reading a book and some information пришлась кстати, потому что я как раз об этом думала. Поскольку is next word, it's like again stylistically higher synonym for because, потому что, да, то есть, но этот недостаток пришелся ей кстати, потому что большую часть времени, most of her time, the bigger part of her time, миссис Дурсель следила за соседями и подслушивала их разговоры. So in English we have the word spying on the neighbors, and I think spying is a quite, so literally it means следить. But следить, like when I hear the word следить, I think it's more like following somebody or like following them by looking at them. But since she was kind of like craning over, fences, I would say подслушивать is basically eavesdropping on the conversation is a good way to explain the spying. Because once again, следить, I would say it's a more active verb when somebody is like following somebody to know their whereabouts, now it can be like through the social media or something, but послушивать is really kind of like eavesdropping, which is spying by listening. А с такой шеей, как у нее, было очень удобно заглядывать за чужие заборы. So here I would say the translator just basically added this because because they basically explain again the idea in English that came very useful. So, and with that neck, as she had, I'm simplifying the words so it's easier to understand, and with that type of a neck, as she had it, было очень удобно, it was very convenient. We can say весьма, since we already know that word. Весьма удобно. Заглядывать за чужие заборы. Заглядывать is to look somewhere very clear. For instance, я заглянула в книгу рецептов, чтобы вспомнить какие-то детали. I kind of glanced over the recipe book very quickly to remember some details. Or заглядывать can also be to stop by. Да, вчера ко мне заглянула соседка. Literally, she looked into like my house. Yeah, but we use it for to stop by. Заглядывать за забор, it's like when you're looking behind something, and here за is going with hold on a second. За is a very versatile preposition. In this case, when you're looking behind somewhere or going behind somewhere, you would use за plus accusative case. За чужие заборы, that's plural, or за забор. Он зашел за здание, and so on. Okay, we'll stop here. Let me know in the comments if that was useful or if you have more questions about this page. Thank you.